Welcome back to the 3 a.m. tapes. Please comment where you're watching from in the world. The first thing you learn working nights at a petrol pump is how much time can stretch without actually moving. I work from midnight to 6. Same shift, same register, same fluorescent lights buzzing like they're tired of being on. The pump sits just outside town where the road stops pretending it's busy. After midnight, it's mostly long-haul trucks, the occasional rideshare driver killing time, and people who don't want to be seen. There are unspoken rules on nights. Don't leave the counter unattended. Don't argue with customers. Don't watch the CCTV too closely unless you have a reason. The cameras work, technically. They lag a bit. The angles are bad. Pump 3 is half cut off by glare, and the camera over the forecourt sometimes freezes for a second or two. Management says it's normal. Most nights, nothing happens. I restock shelves that don't need restocking. I wipe counters that are already clean. I listen to the hum of the drinks fridge and the click of the clock over the cigarette display. At 12:47 a.m., a sedan pulled in. Dark color. Could have been black or blue. Hard to tell under the lights. It stopped at pump 3, which people usually avoid because the card reader is slow. The driver came in, paid cash for a small amount of fuel, and didn't say anything beyond pump 3. Normal enough. What stuck with me was how long he stood at the counter after I handed him the receipt. Not staring, just waiting, like he expected something else to happen. I asked if he needed anything. He shook his head, folded the receipt once, and left. When I checked the time again, it was 12:47. That part bothered me more than it should have. I assumed the clock lagged or I misread it. Night shifts mess with your sense of time. I wrote it off. You have to, or you don't last. The sedan came back the next night. Same time, same pump. I noticed it before it stopped because the forecourt sensor chimed, and I already knew which pump it would choose. That alone made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't explain. The driver came in again. Same clothes, I think. Same quiet voice. Pump 3. This time he paid with a card. I remember because the terminal froze for a second longer than usual. When it approved, the timestamp on the receipt read 12:46 a.m. I glanced at the clock. 12:48. I didn't say anything. There's no point arguing with machines at that hour. What changed was the amount of fuel. It was slightly different, not by much. The previous night was a clean, round number. This one wasn't. After he left, I checked the CCTV. The footage showed his car pulling in. Then it skipped, just a small jump. When it resumed, the car was already parked and the driver was stepping out. That happens sometimes. What didn't happen was him coming inside. The register logs showed the transaction. The receipt was in the bin. But the footage never showed him entering the store. I told myself the camera missed it. The third night, I didn't tell myself anything. He came again, same pump, same time. This time he stood closer to the counter, close enough that I could see his eyes properly. They weren't hostile. They weren't friendly either. They felt focused, like he was checking details. The receipt printed. He didn't take it. He just looked at the timestamp, nodded once, and walked out. The receipt said 12:47 a.m. The clock above me said 12:52. I stopped checking the time after that. It didn't help. On the fourth night, the sedan pulled in, but I didn't hear the sensor. I only noticed because the light outside changed slightly, like something had blocked it. He didn't come inside. Pump 3 activated anyway. The register logged the sale. Cash. I watched the CCTV as the car sat there, engine off, no movement. The fuel counter ticked up slowly, steadily. No one was visible. When it finished, the pump clicked off. The car stayed. I waited. Eventually, the headlights turned on and the sedan drove away. When I checked the footage later, the camera never showed the car arriving or leaving. Pump 3 just started. The receipt printed on its own. I didn't throw that one away. I still have it folded in my locker. The timestamp reads 12:47 a.m. My shift log says I clocked out at 6:03 that morning, but when I checked my phone outside, it was 5:58. I don't work nights anymore. Sometimes, when I drive past that pump after dark, I notice one forecourt light flicker differently than the others. Pump 3 still works. I don't know who it's for now. I just know the register is still keeping track. I work the overnight shift at a petrol station on a stretch of highway where the nearest town is about 15 minutes away. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and the solitude is nice sometimes. Most nights are quiet. Too quiet, honestly. You get used to the hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional rumble of a passing car as a kind of rhythm. It's almost comforting. Last night started like any other. I arrived at 11 p.m., signed in, and made my usual rounds. Check the pumps, wipe down the counters, make sure the shelves aren't completely empty. Everything was normal. Well, as normal as being alone at a place like this can be. About an hour in, I noticed the first little oddity. The clock behind the counter ticked 12:03, but my phone read 12:10. I shrugged it off at first, figured maybe my phone was updating itself or I'd glanced too quickly. But then the security camera monitor flickered. Normally the 4 feeds are steady, nothing moves except the odd car, but this time the cameras caught a pump turning on by itself. Just a faint click, a flash of the digital display. No car in sight. I checked the pumps manually, all off, nothing running. I even pulled the breaker to be safe. Nothing. The night stretched on. I got the urge to check the cameras every 10 minutes just to see if anything else was off. At 1 a.m., I noticed the fuel pump pattern repeating. Pump 2 would activate, then pump 4, then pump 1. Always in the same order, for no reason. No customers, no cars, nothing that could trigger it. And the clocks? They kept drifting. Sometimes my phone would read 1:15 while the wall clock said 1:05. Then later, the opposite would happen. I told myself it was nothing. Too many late nights, too little sleep. My eyes were tired, my mind making shapes out of shadows. But even so, there was a creeping unease I couldn't shake. The little inconsistencies, the pumps, the clocks, the flickering screens, were like whispers of something slightly wrong. Not overtly scary, just wrong. Like the world had misplaced a step and I was the only one noticing. I started keeping notes. Pump 2 activated 11:47, pump 4 11:48, clock drift plus 7 minutes on my phone. Patterns began to emerge, though I didn't want them to. Everything was in rhythm, but the rhythm wasn't mine. By 2:30 a.m., I was exhausted, blinking at the monitors, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint wind brushing against the station's edges. Nothing happened. Everything happened. By 3 a.m., I was fully aware that my sense of time was breaking down. The wall clock, the camera timestamps, my phone, all of them told slightly different stories. Sometimes it felt like the shift had looped. I would look at a pump, then check the screen and see the exact same empty car pull in from a highway, even though I knew the lot had been empty for 10 minutes, or had it only been 10 seconds. The routine had become almost surgical. I wrote down every pump activation, every clock discrepancy, every flicker on the screens. Patterns emerged, and the patterns themselves seemed deliberate. Pump 1, then 3, then 2, repeating. A car appeared on camera 5 at 2:47, then again at 2:51, always empty, always idling for the same 7 seconds before disappearing. I never saw the driver, not once. I started hearing things too, or at least thinking I did. Footsteps behind the counter when I was certain I was alone, a faint sliding noise as if someone had opened a door, and the soft mechanical whir of the pumps turning on and off with no one there. I tried calling the emergency line just to have someone hear that the station was fine, everything was fine, but the line stayed dead. No dial tone, just silence. Sleep deprivation made my thoughts loop. I tried reasoning with myself. Maybe the pumps had a delayed reset mechanism I'd never noticed, or maybe the clocks were just slightly off, drifting due to temperature. But deep down I knew it wasn't just that. Something was off in the flow of the night itself. The station had a rhythm I didn't belong to, a rhythm that didn't account for me. By 4 a.m., the smallest things were unbearable. The smell of fuel felt stronger, almost cloying, like the air itself was moving in waves I couldn't track. A customer's car passed the station, but the headlights didn't seem to cast the shadows I expected. On the monitors, a pump I hadn't touched in hours flickered to life for a few seconds, then went dead. I walked outside to check. Nothing. I sat down at the counter, staring at the flickering lights on the monitor, trying to focus on my own breathing. Every second felt too long, yet I couldn't tell if minutes or hours had passed. My notes didn't help. The sequence of pump activations had shifted again. I wasn't sure if I was observing something real or if the night was rearranging itself around me. By 5:30 a.m., I wasn't tired in the usual sense. I felt stretched thin, like someone had pulled my consciousness into the corners of the station and left me observing it from multiple angles at once. Everything seemed normal, yet completely wrong. I walked outside again. The lot was empty, the road silent, the first hints of dawn on the horizon. I felt relief at the thought of leaving until I checked the camera monitor. The feeds showed me, sitting at the counter, typing on the keyboard. I froze. That was exactly how I had been sitting when I looked at the screens from the other side of the counter. But I hadn't moved. Not yet. My hands weren't on the keyboard, yet the camera clearly showed me typing. Pump 2 activated again. Quietly, the number on the digital display rising by 0.1 liters. I blinked. The clocks, all three, phone, wall, and camera, matched. Too well. They weren't drifting anymore. They were synchronized. And I realized something slowly, the kind of realization that doesn't scream, but presses against your chest. The night had always been doing this. It had its own rules, its own schedule, and I had been just a passenger. I left my notes on the counter, the fluorescent hum, the faint clicks, the shifting shadows. They didn't stop. They wouldn't stop. I stepped out into the cold morning air. The lot was empty, the highway quiet. The station was perfectly normal. Nothing to see, nothing to touch. But I didn't stay. I drove home, glancing back once. The pumps were lined up in the dawn light, innocuous as ever, waiting for the next night, waiting for the next person to keep their rhythm. I don't know if it was the sleep deprivation or if I really saw what I thought I saw. I don't know if anyone else could survive a full night there without noticing. I just know that the station keeps its time, its own sequence, and it doesn't care about mine. And I don't think I'll ever work that shift again.